Everyone has heard the headlines by now. At one point, Donald Trump floated the idea of the United States taking control of Greenland. Most people laughed, the media mocked it, and the story quickly turned into a meme. But instead of reacting emotionally, I wanted to ask a different question. What happens if you strip away the jokes, the politics, and the personalities, and analyze the idea purely from a strategic standpoint? So I asked the AI to do exactly that. I gave it a very specific instruction. No morality, no ideology, no partisan framing, just geopolitics, military power, economics, alliances, and probability. So here's what I asked from ChatGPT. Write a single continuous analytical response in paragraph form without bullet points, headings, or lists. From a strictly geopolitical, military, and economic perspective, evaluate whether a hypothetical US attempt under Donald Trump to forcibly take control of Greenland would be a strategically sound or unsound decision. Base the analysis on historical precedent, alliances dynamics, resource value, military feasibility, and global power competition, avoiding moral, ideological, or partisan language. In the same narrative, explain how NATO and the European Union would most realistically react and what this would mean to the Western cohesion. Then assess how Russia and China would likely interpret and respond to this action, and whether it would materially increase the probability of a large-scale war, including a global conflict. Conclude with a clear overall judgment about whether this scenario would strengthen or weaken the US global influence over the long term, using probabilistic reasoning rather than absolutes. And this is the response I got. From a strictly geopolitical, military, and economic perspective, a hypothetical US attempt under Donald Trump to forcibly take control of Greenland would be strategically unsound despite some superficially attractive features. Greenland's location astride the GI-UK gap and its proximity to the Arctic, North Atlantic sea lanes, and emerging polar routes gives it real military and surveillance value, and the United States already derives most of the value through existing basic rights, intelligence infrastructure, and the alliance cooperation with Denmark, making the marginal strategic gain of outright control relatively limited. Notice that first sentence. The AI immediately frames the idea as unsound, even while acknowledging that Greenland has strategic appeal. This is the perfect example of why capability and strategy are not the same thing. The response continues with historical context. Historical precedents suggest that forcible territorial acquisition by a leading status quo power tends to generate a long-term balancing behavior rather than a durable advantage, particularly when the target is tied to an alliance network. So even if the US could do it, history shows that doing so would almost certainly provoke counterbalancing rather than stable gains. Alliances matter, and breaking them comes at a high cost. Next comes to the military assessment. Militarily, the United States could occupy Greenland with little difficulty, but sustaining control against a political resistance, legal disputes, and allied countermeasures would impose ongoing costs while providing few new capabilities beyond those already accessible. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The US could do it on paper, but doing it, in practice, would create constant headaches without giving much extra advantage. The AI then addresses economic considerations. Economically, while Greenland has potential mineral and rare earth resources, extraction remains capital intensive, environmentally constrained, and long-term, meaning near-term, economic gains would be modest and unlikely to offset diplomatic and strategic losses. In short, Greenland has resources, but not enough to justify breaking the system. The payoff is slow, while the risks are immediate. Then come to alliance implications. NATO and the European Union would most realistically react with severe political condemnation, legal retaliation, and partial institutional rupture. While direct military confrontation with the United States would be improbable, alliance trust would erode sharply, weakening integrated planning, intelligence sharing, and collective deterrence, thereby reducing Western cohesion at a systemic level. This is subtle but serious. No thanks, no war declarations, but the alliances you rely on would quietly stop trusting you, and that has enormous downstream consequences. Now let's look at rival powers. Russia would likely interpret the move as confirmation that territorial revisionism is again acceptable among major powers, using it to justify more assertive behavior in Eastern Europe and the Arctic, while China would frame the action as evidence of declining US commitment to rules-based stability, accelerating its own strategic hedging, alliance outreach, and gray zone tactics, particularly around Taiwan and the South China Sea. So the ripple effect spread far beyond Greenland. Other major powers would adjust their strategies, and the system becomes more unpredictable and competitive. The AI also addresses the risk of war. Although the probability of immediate large-scale war would remain relatively low, the action materially increases long-term conflict risk by degrading alliance deterrence and encouraging competitive escalation among major powers. Not an instant apocalypse, but more dangerous war over time, exactly what strategists mean when they talk about systemic risk. Finally, the conclusion. On balance, probabilistic reasoning suggests this scenario would be far more likely to weaken the US global influence over the long term than to strengthen it, as the loss of allied confidence and systemic legitimacy would outweigh the incremental military and resource benefits of Greenland itself. So what's the takeaway here? The problem with taking Greenland isn't capability, it's consequence. It's a move that signals strength in the short term but creates long-term instability, unpredictability, and erosion of trust. And in a world built on alliances, trust is everything. This doesn't mean the AI is right. It means that this is what a cold probability-based assessment looks like when emotions are removed. And that raises a bigger question. In the world driven by narratives, outrage, and tribal politics, should we be paying more attention to this kind of analysis? Or less? That's what this channel is about. If you want more videos where I challenge AI on politics, power, and the ideas shaping our future, consider subscribing. The next question I'm asking AI might make even more people uncomfortable.